You're listening to The Sister Trill with Danae and Kiveli.
Hello and welcome back to The Sister Trill. I'm Danae.
And I'm Kiveli.
And today we will be talking about our identity as half Greeks and half Germans and all the little quirks that come with this. But before we get into the episode, let's talk about what we disagreed on this week.
All right, so I'll start. And I think that's one of the disagreements that we kind of have had for a very long time. In terms of that, you do accept it and you're fine when I do it, but you're generally I would say, skeptical of it, which is napping during the day.
Ooh.
Basically, whenever I'm okay, I feel a bit tired, my mind is not on 100%, let me take a 20-minute power nap, and then usually when I get back from it, I feel reborn, re-energized, and you're generally not a fan of power naps or napping during the day.
I mean, I'm not a fan. Well, it's not entirely true that I'm not a fan. First of all, sometimes I do nap before a concert.
Okay.
Right?
Very rarely.
Yeah, rarely, but sometimes I do. But generally, the thing is that I know that it is something inside of me that is weird, that is triggered by it.
Okay.
I acknowledge that.
Okay.
I don't think that I'm actually right about this. And I do know that I'm somehow triggered by the fact if someone is tired and falling asleep in a situation where you're not supposed to be tired and be falling asleep. But I already explained this to you. If you are consciously telling me I'm going downstairs into my bed for a nap, that's completely valid to me. But to me, what I find super weird is if you're somewhere and then you just kind of fall asleep in an armchair or on the sofa. This is what
I dare to show a tiny bit of lack of control.
Yeah, maybe it's that.
Danae Durkin will not approve.
Maybe you're right. Maybe it is that. I don't know what it is. I know that it is not the other person's fault. I know that it is my thing, but it just triggers me. It triggers me so much. It triggers me if someone just goes oh, I'm just gonna doze off a little bit. And I'm can you please wake up? Can you please talk to me? I'm not dozing off. Why are you dozing off?
I understand you. Yeah.
Yeah, so I honestly don't have a point of disagreement this week. I'm very happy with you, Kiveli.
Wow, yeah.
Yeah, I don't know. If something spontaneously comes to my mind during the episode, I'll slip it in.
All right.
But for now, let's just get right into it.
Okay.
So, little bit of background for anyone that doesn't know this just yet. Kiveli and I have a Greek mother and a German father. We grew up in Germany, though, and spoke Greek at home, though, with our mother. So we very much had a very strong Greek cultural impact. Yeah, Greek presence, exactly. To the point that I now, for example, also speak Greek with my kids. Kiveli also speaks Greek with them. So the Greek is definitely very prevalent, although we grew up in Germany and went to German school. So this is kind of how our life played out. And also our father, when our parents got divorced, moved to the US. So although he's German, he also had a very also different cultural impact on us through this whole, he moved to Californian influence, let's say. So I wanted to start this episode by asking you, if someone said, what do you feel like? Would you say you feel more Greek or more German or maybe none of those?
I think that probably if gun to my head, I'd have to choose one. Not because I actually am more that, but I would say Greek. Yeah. And the reason I would say Greek is I think because also from an optical perspective, I look more Greek than I do German. So there is that, the visual aspect, which adds some Greekness to it. And also I think that maybe because it's the culture that I did not grow up in and I've romanticized more probably.
Yeah.
There is I think I identify a tiny bit more with my Greek side than my German side, although I'm very conscious of the fact that I have very many perspectives and worldviews that are based on, I would say, German ideals, for sure. And I think that in Greece, we are very much viewed for known for those German ideals, But if someone who, is neither Greek nor German would ask me, I would probably go with Greek.
Yeah. Yeah, it's interesting because I would also say that, and I cannot really explain why. Because I must say that I mean, we went to German school. We grew up in Germany. Everything was so German around us, and I don't really know why. But the truth is that I feel kind of proud, to be Greek, and also I feel that when people used to ask me when I was much younger, also, so where are you from? I would always be like, I'm Greek. Yeah, I'm Greek because I felt like the German was clear anyway. And I would really focus on this.
Exactly.
Greek thing.
I mean, I would say that, you know, the general attitude, I mean, that's a whole different topic, but the general attitude to, you know, being proud of being German is, I would say, a very much, it has a lot of ambivalence to it, you know? I would say that,
it's also a point that I wanted to talk about later on in the podcast.
So I would say that there is that aspect, you know, that we're not necessarily imbibed in I would say instilled with you know, German patriotism as a German person. And even you know, other than that, I would say that Greece has tons of patriotism, especially connected to ancient Greece, which I would say is a culture that is, you know, you can very easily be super proud and feel very cool, you're connected to it. Also the language, you know, you're the person in school where everyone's like, Kiveli, you speak Greek. What does this word actually mean? You can actually explain it. Or the mythological stories, you know. So I would say Greek culture is just a pretty, you know, badass culture.
It's a cool thing.
It's a cool culture, you know. And I think that definitely added to, you know, us, like me being like, I'm Greek, you know.
I think also we also very much grew up with that culture. For example, our grandma used to read to us the stories of the Greek mythology, or used to talk to us about Alexander the Great. I remember, and even these like also kind of bloody, you know, historical
struggles,
battles, war, Spartans, Leonidas, King Leonidas, all of these things were stories that we were told as young girls, and stories that we were told with pride, and that we found
I remember
amazing.
Every, like, back when we still used to do like long holidays in Greece ages ago, there was always one place we would drive to from Athens where our mother's godmother lived, and she had her summer house there, and we'd always visit her. And on the way from Athens to that place, we would always pass by some statues. One statue would also be Leonidas, and every time we would pass by the statue of Leonidas, every time our great uncle, I think, right, and would tell us like in great detail the entire story, and then the next statue would come by and, you know, that person's story, and I think it's also, you know, generally a Greek thing. I don't think it's just us. I mean, I've met every like half Greek person that I've met that did not grow up in Greece is extremely proud and conscious of their Greek identity.
This heritage.
Absolutely.
For sure. So I think anyone that has watched the movie My Big Fat Greek Wedding is, you know, knows these classic misunderstandings of, or, you know, not even misunderstandings, but these funny things of, you know, what is typically Greek. Actually, for us, I think, you know, we were speaking with our father who had this big fat Greek wedding because he was the non-Greek one and our mother was the Greek one. And he was watching the movie and he said, you know, I don't know what is so funny about it.
This is exactly what
happened. So
I think it's like not entirely inaccurate.
It is definitely not inaccurate. I think in our personal case, it is a bit different because our Greek family is not this typically huge Greek family. So that's a big difference. But other than that,
I mean, I remember the like this one kind of quote. I won't be able to like, you know, piece it together completely. Where she's like, our mother served us every I don't know, like every lunch, some Greek dish with a great like steaming side of guilt, you know, and like it came up where she's like, your father and I came to this country, you know, with no money in our pocket, and we did all of this for you. And I mean, that is such a Greek thing. Like, it's kind of like, I'm doing this all for you, you know, I sacrifice so you can live this life, you know. It's such a Greek thing to say.
And also, I think also one of the main points of the movie, this every word comes from the Greek language. This is something that, no joke, we have been told constantly from our Greek relatives. I mean, be it our mother, our grandmother, our great uncle, everybody, and I mean, it's true.
No, but
It's true.
I remember, like,
I feel this, and I say this now to other people as well.
Yeah, and I remember actually many times when we would go to school, and again, it's like more, the older Greek generation. Like, again, it would have been like our great uncle or our grandma or something like that would say that. Like, we would go to school and it would be this game. Okay, come up with 10 words of objects that you see, like, driving by that have a Greek root.
Right.
And then it's like, like you start with the word car in German is Auto, which comes from αυτοκίνητο.
Yeah.
And and
Which means an object that moves automatically on its own, and the also the in English the automatic comes from the Greek word on its own, moving on its own without someone driving it. I mean, this is at least what it means. Of course, the car is driven by someone, but
so I mean, this word thing is totally true.
This word, and I remember then like realizing that even the simplest word, like for example, center, comes from kendro, and all these things, and so very interesting. So I thought that we would go through certain points that are either, very typically for the German side or for the Greek side, and then maybe talk about how we view them, and then maybe also some stories attached to them. So the very first point is, I think one that we have many stories about, is my nice topic of punctuality.
Oh my God, yes. Of course. Yeah.
So, why don't you tell us a little bit about how do you feel? Do you feel very German or very Greek when
so
you're
I
punctual?
definitely feel very German about punctuality.
Yeah.
I am super triggered by people that are not punctual.
Yeah.
I really don't like it. I mean, because I think it's so unnecessary. Okay, if you're not punctual because like actually, you've missed a train or there's like, tons of I don't know, there's a traffic jam, although even that, if you're somewhere in a super crowded city, you expect there to be a traffic jam. Anyway, I'm just saying, like, it's fine if it's like a one-time thing because something happened. But like as a general rule, I don't feel that there is anything preventing you from just planning how much time you need to get from point A to point B and arriving at point B at the time that has been arranged, So,
I think
definitely
we're both
very German.
Very German.
And it goes beyond punctuality because it's not just, the fact that you are there at the time that you decided, but it's also the general, I would say, approach to planning. Mm-hmm. And like, strategically planning out your day, deciding you're going to meet at the beach at this time, then you're going to, whatever, be together for a bit, then you're going to meet for dinner at this time. And I think that's a very German way of kind of planning stuff, which I find I love it. Kind of, that helps that helps you get the most out of the day.
For someone who has never, had any contact with that unpunctual side, let's maybe give an example. So, for example, if we now said to each other or to a German friend, very stereotypical here, okay, let's meet up at 2, then, we would see, okay, which train or, bus or whatever you need to do, or when do I need to start walking to be there at 2, leave the house at, let's say, 1:45.
Exactly.
Be there at 2, and then really make sure. And, in Germany, I would say it's very common that if you see that you won't make it at 2, but it's going to be 2:05, you're going to send a little message.
5 minutes late.
Sorry, I'll be 5 minutes
Absolutely.
late. So sorry, see you there. Okay. In Greece now, and I think us who come from the island and a village on the island, probably it's even more extreme than in the city. If you say we'll meet up at 2, that doesn't mean anything, absolutely anything.
No.
It means that at 2, the other person will maybe start considering
putting on pants.
Putting on pants, and maybe start considering the idea that you're going to meet up later in the day at some point.
Exactly.
And then maybe he's going to call you at 2:30 and say, hey, so when shall we meet up?
Like, I'm already here. I've been waiting for 30 minutes. And he's like, oh, how do I get there? You take 2 buses and then you'll be there. And it's like, okay. And by the way, the interesting thing is that I've noticed it, like, it's not just that, that's the way they see it, but when someone asks me for like, do you want to meet tomorrow at 3? And I'm like, yeah, okay, I love it. The next day, they ask me again at 2, are we still on for 3?
Yeah,
and I'm like,
of course we are.
I mean, we planned it, didn't we? And he's like, okay, let's do it. And I'm like, I thought it was already arranged that we were going to do it, you know?
Yeah. No, it's just a different mentality. They're not trying to be rude. For us, it comes off as rude.
Yeah.
I mean, I think it's rude if someone doesn't show up to an appointment halfway on time.
Yeah.
But they're not trying to be rude. It's a different lifestyle.
Exactly.
It's super easygoing. Time is not as important.
I think that actually, if you are one of the people trying to push punctuality, you're considered kind of, not, like kind of
Not fun.
anxious. No, not fun, but like, like just, chill,
Jalarse.
jalarse, exactly. Like, it's like kind of, it's like, we're gonna get there. Mr. Najoriese. The classic one.
Oh my God, yeah. I must say, I appreciate a punctual person.
Me too.
I appreciate it so much.
Absolutely.
What is for you the acceptable window of being late?
I would say, okay, like I would say extra. I put a lot of emphasis on punctuality. If you are, no matter how unpunctual you are, you have to say it.
Right.
I would say, like, if you're more than 2-3 minutes late, say it. I mean, it doesn't matter that you are, but write it, you know, because otherwise I'm starting to like doubt myself if I've gotten the time or the place wrong,
I feel like anything up to 5 minutes is okay.
5 minutes, of course, is okay.
Like
but
without writing. But after that, I also want to get a message. And for me, because I'm also quite extreme, I know that when I'm standing at the meeting spot, and let's say it's 2 p.m. and it's 2 p.m., I start like getting anxious. I like look right and left. Like,
Exactly,
where's the person?
exactly.
And if it's like 1 or 2 past 2, I'm like, okay, are they gonna come?
Exactly.
Like,
Have they forgotten
like, these are
about
the
it?
thoughts that are
Absolutely.
going through my head.
Exactly. And also, by the way, when I am late, which happens very rarely, first of all, I write, like the moment I notice I'm going to be late, I'm like, okay, so I don't know if I'm going to be late. I might be 3 minutes late because I might miss this next connection or something. I'm going to let you know. I might be 3 minutes or 5 minutes, but not more than 10 minutes late. I'm so sorry. Like, I get so anxious. Like, it's like things are starting to eat me alive from the inside.
I totally get it.
Get these like pins and needles feeling when I'm late. I get such a bad feeling.
Yeah. Okay, so the next point that I would like to talk about is the general point of like celebrating, partying, dancing, also maybe attached to it a little bit of a certain loudness.
Yeah. I would say alive.
Yeah, being alive, because I mean, obviously the Greeks are people that definitely celebrate life, and partying and dancing I feel like is something that comes very natural to the Greek people, and I love it so much that you can just walk through a Greek street and it is the most normal thing that someone will just be standing up and dancing a little bit to Greek music or to any music. It's nothing uncommon. Whereas in Germany, to make that happen, it takes so much effort.
I think that there are so many reasons why that is the way it is. And it's one of my favorite things about the Greek culture. First of all, I think that celebrating isn't just a celebration like from the hedonistic approach of like celebrating and going wild, but like the Greeks have a way of like celebrating reality. Like also the songs that you hear aren't songs about, oh my God, and everything was amazing and then the wine was, flowing. But it's all about, it's actually all about heartbreak and hardship, but like celebration in spite of it, or maybe almost because of it, you know?
Yeah.
And also like, the dances are often like, are born out of more like despair, like in the history of the dance,
and it's like sharing the despair.
Exactly.
For example, the male dance,
exactly,
Zebekikos, is actually the hurting male,
man, right?
The hurting man, because maybe he's going through a difficult love phase. I mean, usually it's that.
Yeah.
And then he dances, and the other people kind of wallow in his sorrow with him and clap
but
for him.
But not at all in a self-pitying way.
No,
it's always
they
attached to this pride,
Yeah.
I mean, it's not at all like, sad. It's almost like, keeping your dignity no matter what life throws at you.
Yeah.
And that dignity comes from, celebrating and both admitting your sorrow and transcending it because of it. And I would say that this kind of celebrating real human nature rather than just positive human nature is why it is so intrinsic to Greek culture.
Yeah.
And the other thing that I feel is that I would say that, Greek children kind of partake in the celebration or in the celebratory atmosphere very early on. I mean, unlike in Germany, where I think like, things like bedtimes are much stricter, and it's like, no, if my child doesn't go to bed at their usual time, it's bad for them. In Greece, it's the other way around. It's like, no, I'm going to take my child with me, and they're going to sleep on the chair, in my arm, on my lap, but as long as they can, as long as their eyes stay open, they're going to be with us. And there is something really nice about it. I mean,
which is also what happened with us, by the way.
Exactly.
Our mom used to take us, and we used to love it. Like to the village, to the dances.
Exactly.
And we would like fall asleep at some point, or also not fall asleep.
But yeah, and if you do, then your parents carry you back home and just tuck you into bed. And it's such a nice thing. You see, like, that's why these scenes, the dancing is not at all about perfection. It's not about looking good. It's not about doing it in a way that is specifically amazing. It's about expressing yourself. And that's why you'll see like literally a 3-year-old dancing alongside, a 75-year-old, alongside a 40-year-old, alongside a group of like youngsters, you have, it's just like this, the aspect that we're celebrating transcends all barriers of age and, kind of skill,
And I think people are not afraid to look bad.
Not at all.
People are not afraid to not be perfect because it is not about that. It's about sharing somehow. For me, it's a very sharing culture. Also, many dances are you hold each other's hands.
Yes, or like shoulders.
Or shoulders, and you go in a circle. And this is very different to me from the German approach where, if someone will dance, it's either because he's a professional dancer and can, somehow be perfect about it. Or better not at all. Just don't embarrass yourself.
Yeah. And I think it's also, it's a huge shame, I think, also of our generation. I would say that embarrassment and kind of self-consciousness has definitely increased in like with our generation. I think if I compare it, for example, to our parents' generation. And I would say that, I mean, that of course also pertains general to like dancing culture in clubs and things like that. No matter where you are in Greece or in Germany, that's pretty similar, that people are much, more self-conscious, and therefore, dancing many times only works alongside, a certain level of, alcohol consumption and things like that. Which is such a pity. But I think that these cultural dances are often a gateway to get away from that. And you see it in Greece that the same boys and girls that usually don't like to dance in clubs, are usually just sitting in the corner watching it. When then it comes to like Greek dancing, where it's like, in a circle all together, suddenly totally go out of their shell and dance because it's suddenly not about this,
Yeah, exactly.
And
it's amazing.
Another amazing, it's such a beautiful thing to have, this like approach to celebrating in Greece.
And the other thing which I already mentioned is this general, let's say, loudness. I mean, it's a very different volume. If you're in a Greek restaurant where people kind of, speak loudly, yell, just, go yamas and everything, or if you're in a German restaurant where it's like silence, the tone of voice is like close to a whisper.
I mean, also the food, the way we eat food. In Greece, you order tons of things and everyone shares everything.
Exactly.
In Germany, everyone orders their own dish and eats their own dish in a way.
Food was actually my next point.
Okay.
So it's great. No, it's great that we're talking about it because I think that in Greece, this whole like going out and eating or even just drinking coffee, it's all about the shared experience. As you said, you have this tapas style. It's called mezedakia. In the middle, everyone has a small plate. No matter how fancy the restaurant, even in the fanciest restaurants, you have small plates if it's a Greek restaurant, and everyone shares. You never have this first course, second course, big plate things. And in Germany, it's like, don't touch my food. I order this. Can I have half a pizza on my plate and the other half on the other plate? It's so different. And also when the bill comes in Greece, it's common knowledge that everyone will kind of partake in the bill. It's in the middle. Let's say it's 100 euros. Everyone will put in, if it's 10 people, they're 10 euros. Done. In Germany, it's like, let's divide it with the cents.
And another thing is, any restaurant worth its salt is gonna give something on the house in the end. The dessert is always on the house in the end. You can obviously order
or
dessert,
some
but
drink, or
there is always something. Usually, many times it's like a dessert, it's fruit, it's yogurt, it's like the specialty of the house. There will always be something on the house in the end, which in Germany is rare. Sometimes they'll, if they really like you, they'll bring out a shot.
And
of
when it
something.
happens, it's like, oh wow,
exactly. In
so
Greece,
much.
it's rude from the restaurant children's, side if they don't bring something for free in the end.
Yeah.
And also, in Greece, this is, of course, it then, you kind of think, you follow down this path and you end up understanding why, a country like Greece is more prone to financial crises than a country like Germany. Because in Greece, if, for example, it costs, 103 euros and you don't have 3 euros on hand, they'll be like, fine, give me 100, it's fine, don't worry about it.
Yeah.
Maybe pass by again tomorrow or whatever. In Germany, you won't get out of that restaurant until you've paid the entire bill.
Yeah, it's like, okay, leave your ID here, go to the ATM, get the cash.
But, this vibe of kind of, being there for each other, being in this together is a very nice feeling in Greece.
Also, I think that Greeks are more willing to put down money for a shared social experience like that. I think that, let's say, the average Greek is happier to pay for food outside for a night out with their friend than the average German. Because it is something that is considered an important part of life. And also, when the bill comes, it's a very common scene that the Greeks start fighting over who's going to pay it. And no, I want to pay it. No, I want to pay it.
Forget about it. I'm going to pay it. No, you forget about it.
And then one person, gets up and is like, no, I'm paying. Here,
and
waiter. And then the other one's like holding him back. No, let me. And in Germany, that is not something that happens.
And the other thing is, you mentioned it as volume. And of course, there's a volume aspect to it, but it's like aliveness, temperament. That's what I'd say. When I say, when people ask me, you're not German, right? Your energy is far too high energy for German. And I'm also half Greek. And, it's this associated with like temperament.
Yeah. And the truth is that when Kiveli and I talk sometimes in Greek, that people that are not Greek and that don't understand what we're saying sometimes wonder if we're having an argument. But we're just simply like talking about fun stuff and being loud and using our hands and
gesticulating. Gesticulation is a lot.
For anyone that's watching the podcast, you can see how much we use our hands and our gestures, but this is, I think, part of that side. It's like you want to express yourself. You want to somehow and this gets a bit louder. I think we're both on the louder side of things.
Absolutely.
But I'm not unhappy about it.
No, I have to say, every time, we land in Greece and, we get to the, I feel, it's like, obviously, you feel connected to it because we are half Greek, right? But, there is this feeling of, it's like, these intangible factors of it, and it's really special. You know? I think Greece really just is an incredibly special country for so many reasons. But this part of the culture that pertains to, having kind of perfected the imperfection of social encounters is really special. And I think that most people that see that, we've had tons of very special moments with people that through the festival that we have invited to Greece, and they've kind of experienced a typical Greek evening. And, it's just the perfect experience that creates people like a comfortable feeling for people to be themselves and kind of get out of their shell, but within their comfort zone, because that's what it's about.
Yeah, as you said, during the festival, we have, I think, so many encounters with, Greek-German mentalities that also clash very often.
Of course,
So the next point I want to mention is it's hard to find, a word for it, but I put it under the category professionalism. I think you know what I mean by that, but it's hard to explain it. Do you want to start talking about it maybe?
Sometimes I think that when we approach this topic, especially on the level of the festival, that maybe we're a bit unfair towards the fact that we don't really, because we never grew up with the Greek way of working on things, that we're maybe kind of very partial to the German way and consider that to be the better way. Now, I would say the reason why is because I would say Germany, definitely a German quality is a type of reliability that I think is also based on lack of trust, but that when you organize something as big as a music festival is kind of the better way to go. I'm thinking, for example, very specifically, things like in Germany, everything that is decided, every deal that is made is put into some kind of contract that two people sign, and then, you're beholden to that contract. No one can be like, no, I'm not going to do that. And there is, I would say, the kind of underlying threat of legal consequences
Right.
if that contract is not adhered to. Now, in Greece, many decisions, especially the smaller decisions, are not done with the contract, but are kind of done with with the kind of trust and goodwill towards the other person. So if you decide something like we're gonna do the festival in the castle or something like that, sometimes these things don't really have contracts. It's just like, okay, it's kind of the like your word is your contract, and therefore also the word is very, I would say, carries a lot of weight. If someone says yes, that carries a lot of weight. And kind of, I would say that what you bargain with in Greece is your reputation. And in Germany, what you bargain with is just the deal on the table, So it's a very different approach to organizing something. And I would say it's prone to more like small crises in the moment,
Yeah,
in
to
Greece.
me, also, this whole professionalism aspect has one big section which I find very hard to deal with, which is that I find that people often take things personally or act on a whim. So in Greece, so for example, if for some reason you're feeling offended because someone said something, it is not uncommon to say, okay, you know what, I'm just gonna stop now. No, I don't feel like it,
Yeah.
Just deal with it. And something that I feel like in Germany is not even an option. No one's gonna say deal with it. You're gonna just swallow your pride and just do it.
But also because, and one has to also put that again into perspective, is because Germany stuff is much better funded.
Yeah.
So many of the things you do them also out of like a professional, this is my job.
Yeah.
And in Greece, because everything is underpaid in Greece. I mean,
Yeah.
every job, most of it is done, so much is done on a voluntary basis. Therefore, you feel like I'm doing it just for me, And the things that are not done on a voluntary basis are usually done on an underpaid basis.
I also
So-
feel that people might be also a bit more, passionate about what they're doing in Greece. So when they're doing it, they're absolutely loving it. And if something doesn't go their way, then they feel so betrayed emotionally that they somehow cannot carry on.
Yeah.
Whereas in Germany, there is an emotional distance,
Yeah.
From this whole
Exactly.
job. And you just like, okay, I'm doing it because I'm doing it. And
Yeah.
I think it has a pro and a con. I mean, I love that you can, have reliable co-workers.
Yeah.
But also, of course, it's amazing if someone is doing it with so much passion.
And I mean, I this is not the first time I've told this story. I mean, you obviously know it, but I'll never forget, in terms of this organizing things last minute or through word of mouth or, through kind of relying on a person's desire to do something for you in Greece rather than Germany. I remember this one situation where in one of the festivals, we had organized this one kind of little musical moment in a place of the village that had tons of cars driving by, and it was very loud, and generally speaking it was very I would say visually extremely pleasing because you had like the backdrop of the entire village, but it wasn't very practical in terms of the surrounding situation. So we arrived there and we had 10 minutes for the musical moment to start, and we were really worried this is going to really get lost in the whole sound of the cars. And then one team member who had kind of the number of the police chief, I suppose, of the village on hand, just called the police and said, okay, hang on, we have to do this musical moment. Can you create a barrier for the cars in 10 minutes so the cars are kind of all diverted to drive a different way for 20 minutes and then open it up again? And the police chief was like, of course. And he was there 5 minutes later, on his coffee. He went from the neighboring cafe where he was drinking a coffee, went, put on a makeshift barrier, kind of said, hey, everyone, we're doing it another way for the next 10 minutes. The cars were diverted, all the shops kind of for 10 minutes stopped playing their music, and there was this beautiful little moment, and then afterwards kind of life went on as usual. And if I think of the same thing in Germany,
It's unthinkable.
You would call the police and they'd be like, okay, first you have to fill out 3 contracts.
Where is your permit?
Exactly. The next available consultation is in 3 weeks.
Yeah.
Then maybe we can think about this. So this is the flip side. of it.
Things get easier
because
because it's not so bureaucratic, but of course things can also get harder. There are two sides to it. Yeah, so we kind of touched on this before, but I wanted to also talk about the whole subject of music. The folk music, which is so different in both countries. Also, do you feel connected to both or more to one of the two?
I have to say, I don't really feel connected to German folk music. And actually, I had a very interesting conversation with our teacher about this because, and I didn't really follow up on this, and I didn't check if that was true, but it seemed kind of very possible and very, that was true, is the fact that he said because of the Second World War and kind of this, lasting stain of the Third Reich, because of that, German folk music was from that point onwards never allowed to be about like actual German patriotism or about actually like deep cultural appreciation or connection to the German culture, and therefore was transformed to just be about like literally very inconsequential, not important, not deep going topics, like would be about like carnival songs and I don't know, like things like and then we danced around the tree, tra la 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 la, like something like that, and it was never really about the more deeper going human emotions. And that's why, for example, also German folk music is almost exclusively, everything is in major, everything is kind of like in a 2/4 or 3/4
very simple
measure,
beats.
very simple, and that's different with Greek music. Greek folk music is so deep, so diverse, and also so complicated, like it's not simple at all.
It's also very different according to where you are. Every island kind of has its own direction.
Very rich, therefore.
Yeah, it's very rich. Just to comment on what you said about the German folk music, there are, of course, older folk songs. Before the World Wars, like, Komm lieber Mai und Mache, or
right.
Das Wandern ist des Müllers Lust,
right,
things like that.
But I feel that almost is like, then poetry rather than...
Yeah.
And it's not really, it's not as prevalent. Like when you grow up in Germany, you don't hear these songs at home.
Yeah.
In Greece, everyone knows these songs.
Yeah.
You hear them in the cafes, you hear them at home. It's not as spread, I think that is all. But yeah, it's very difficult to say. I think Germany has a very ambivalent and tricky relationship to German pride. And I would say like one of the main sources of pride for any culture is, their music in a way.
Yeah.
And I would say if anything, German takes pride off of like its very rich history of like classical music, and like very, very high quality classical music. That's where maybe like the German pride in a way,
or
what
also
they're proud
football
of.
used to.
Well, okay,
Yeah, but for some reason I also feel so much more connected to the Greek music. We both, when we hear a Greek song, we immediately feel it in our bodies and we want to dance and sing along and express ourselves to it. I feel like it awakens a very specific thing in us.
And again, I can only boil it down to this fact of authenticity, that it doesn't celebrate something that could be, it celebrates what is.
Yeah, and it doesn't celebrate these perfections. It's not about, that one night, where we like kind of like pop music or but it celebrates all the imperfections, heartbreak, sadness,
frustration,
suffering,
nostalgia, it's really, and also the other thing, and I think that is true for a lot of like cultural and I don't know if that would be the right word, but like indigenous music, I also want to say that it is incredibly complicated.
I was going to say the rhythms are very complicated.
Yeah. And it's so interesting because many times the same people that, for example, in Greece struggle to like just clap on the offbeats of like a simple, 4/4 beats that like, can't get that going, then have no problem like perfectly dancing to like a 7/8 beat or like a 9/8 beat and getting this perfectly and everything, 5/8, something like that. So it's really like, it's really very deeply rooted in Greek culture, their music, like our music.
Yeah.
And it's absolutely beautiful.
Yeah. So the next point that I wanted to talk about a little bit is hospitality. Hospitality as a concept. Obviously it's known that generally, I would say in Southern Europe, but especially in Greece, hospitality plays a huge role. The guest of the house, is the king, is the most valuable person that can be there. But maybe tell me your perspective.
I think that there are many more rituals around hospitality in Greece. I'm thinking about things like whenever you go to someone's house, this person has to have prepared something to give you. Even if you're just there for 5 minutes, in these 5 minutes is rude for you to leave and rude for them to send you off before they've given you like a bit of like a small
Something
sweet,
sweet,
a coffee, like things like that. And from on the flip side, if you go to someone's house, you need to bring something with you. Once again, a little sweet, a drink, something, like it's very much based on this like giving situation. In Germany, I mean, obviously it's appreciated. I mean, it's not like no one does it, but it's not at all expected. It's not considered rude if you don't do it, definitely.
What I find is a huge difference is that in Germany, your own possessions are worth so much more, I find, than in Greece. In Germany, it's very much mine, yours. In Greece, I find that these lines get very blurry. You can use my car, you can do that, you can eat. Like, even if I'm like literally, families in the village that literally have zero, they're basically hungry, they're really like having problems themselves.
Yeah.
If a guest comes, take everything. Take our best food. Take the biggest piece of meat.
That's true.
Whatever it is.
Absolutely. Like they take pride from being able to share that with you.
That is not only considered the right thing to do, but this is what makes people happy to give. And I find that such an interesting concept because growing up in Germany, of course, I also have a lot of the other mentality inside of me, that it makes me happy to acquire a lot of things for myself. And I'm proud to show people, look what I managed to, get through hard work. I don't know, let's say a nice house or a nice car or, whatever it is. And in Greece, it's like, look what I can offer you. Nobody cares about what you have. Like, even if your house is small, that's not important. When the guest comes, the important thing is how much food are you going to offer on the table. That is your standing.
And of course,
society.
within that, also like these far more, I would say, traditional, a bit old school things of, like the woman or just let's just say someone, but let's face it, it's usually the woman cooks like, a huge meal for the guests. And, that, and you kind of like, you also take pride in the fact that you are a good cook and things like that.
And nobody cares about how you eat when nobody's there. Like, this is not important. What's important is what you give the guests.
Exactly.
It's such a sharing culture in everything, in going out, in the music, in the dancing, in the hospitality.
However, what I would like to say, because I feel like, at least in my lived experience, it goes against the cliche, which is usually the cliche is saying that, Germans are so distant towards each other and, so much more, I don't know, cold-hearted and Greeks are like so welcoming and hospitable and everything. And that is all, the hospitable part is true. But what I find is not necessarily true is that Greeks are much more open to Germans when it comes to actual vulnerability. I feel that Germans, or like many times these cultures that are, are people are told are, distant and like more egoistic or things like that. And I think Germany is definitely considered one such culture. I found that in Germany, you get to a point of like, vulnerable, real conversations much quicker. Like, yes, in the beginning, you keep it very distant and you keep it very small talky.
I understand what you mean.
But very quickly, if you once find, the right conversation, the right kind of icebreaker, you can get to a truly, personal, vulnerable conversation very quickly. I feel in Greece, it's almost, it's almost it's almost bad manners to try to target a more vulnerable conversation with someone very quickly. This is something, it's everything like all the symbols, all like the generosity in terms of hospitality are a given and are there. But when it comes to actually, sharing vulnerability, that comes much later in Greece if I compare it to Germany.
Because I think that in Greece, you keep the real stuff in the very close
in the
circle.
family kind
in
of,
the family. Also, the family plays such a huge role. This is where you share the problems, and then to go and talk about not secret but let's say private stuff of the family somewhere else is
which I mean I would say that the philosophy of raising children in Greece versus the philosophy of raising children in German, I mean, for me personally, I would say that the philosophy in Germany is more conducive to being a successful, self-functioning,
because you just
adult.
let them be more independent.
I mean, it is much the German philosophy of raising children is very much based on how much responsibility can I give the child as early as possible. And also like, this process of, okay, and now you're an adult, I'm going to let you go, move out of the house, spread your wings kind of, is very much encouraged. And I would say in Greece, the opposite is encouraged.
It's the opposite. The houses are designed in a way that the kid
stays in the house.
Can stay in the house.
Yeah.
Exactly.
I mean,
and then usually it's the wedding gift
exactly
to the kids that they get their own house or apartment.
What that means is that most, especially, I mean, I see this especially in boys, but also girls, but most boys will live with their mother and their father up until the moment that they live with their wife. And that does not...
Or husband.
Or husband, yeah. But I mean, I was trying to make this whole first the mother kind of washes the clothes and makes the food, and then the wife washes the clothes and makes the food.
Yeah.
So and also, it is a combination of reasons. First of all, it's a financial reason. Like many people that I talk to, because I mean, these are the people that are our age,
Yeah.
And there is a financial component to it's much more expensive to, have to pay for your own rent, your own stuff, and rather than just sharing it with the family. But it's also a cultural reason. It's also this, I can take care of my mother,
And exactly, I think this is important that what you're saying, take care of my mother, because in Greece, it's also absolutely clear that the kids will take care of their parents when they're old and need help. The kids will move back in the house if they're not there already.
Exactly. Yeah.
And take care of them.
Or the parent will move into it.
Exactly.
But by the way, the parent moving to their house, I find that much more understandable, from a certain point, rather than the other way, the kids moving back, But
in Germany, it's very common practice that you put the parent in a how do you say, nursing home? Nursing home, right? Yeah. In a nursing home, old people's home.
And it's not a mean thing. Like many old people in Germany don't want to be kind of a burden to their families.
It's just a different mentality.
Like, for example, our German grandmother, she lived the last years of her life in a nursing home, and it was totally her decision. She just, she wanted, and also because, she felt like, within her nursing home, she has her friends that are the same age, and she can do cool projects together and stuff. So I think Germany
and for our Greek grandparents, it would be like
unimaginable.
I mean, our mother, such an offensive.
Yeah, I mean, our mother, for both her parents when they were sick, she flew back and took care of them up until the end.
Yeah.
And I would say generally you can reduce it to kind of, I think Germany stresses the paramount like you are responsible for yourself, and like kind of you're responsible for your successes, but also for your failures. And in Greece, it's more like you're responsible for your family.
Yeah.
And, and
for the collective.
The collective in a way.
Yeah.
And I mean, I think that for a generally happy, fulfilled life, it's much more, I would say, efficient and helpful, and in the end also helpful for your family if you lay the highest responsibility on yourself.
Yeah.
Because then, yes, you take responsibility for your successes, but you also take responsibilities for your failure.
Yeah.
And if you're set up in your life in a way where you're the most successful version of yourself, which definitely needs to include things like moving out at a certain point, standing on your own 2 feet, then you're actually in a point where you truly can help out your family and maybe also elevate your family from a point.
It's true, but I do think that there is also something very special to this, innate feeling of course I'm going to help my parents when they're old, and, of course I'm going to be there for them, and this, it's kind of an unconditional love no matter what. Of course, I'm totally with you, I'm a huge fan of responsibility. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think that, the other thing also has its valid existence.
And I think that maybe we are in this privileged position as many people that, share cultures that are mixed cultures, that we can maybe, take the best of both worlds.
Yeah, absolutely.
I mean, I definitely don't want to not take care of our parents when they're old, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
But at the same time, I think, this self-responsibility is super important.
For sure, yeah.
And then you can take the generosities of, the Greek culture into account as well.
Yeah.
But definitely, I would say, like, for raising children, the, giving responsibility earlier,
not like smothering them.
Encouraging self-reliance rather than trying to control them as much as possible is much more supportive of the child, no matter what direction
Maybe
they want to go
little
to.
fact before we move on to the last point, because you said raising children. I think a classic difference between Greek and German mothers, I would say, although not only mothers, but parents, because we also had this example with a father once, is the amount of times you talk on the phone with your child when they have already moved out. So we're talking like post 18 years old, post school times.
Yes.
They are a totally self-functioning adult in their own apartment.
Sometimes with their own children.
Sometimes even with their own children, yeah. And it is completely normal for a Greek parent to call their kid every couple of hours.
Like multiple times a day.
Multiple times a day, not just twice, like 4 or 5 times. Every time I would say major event, I mean, what's a major, every time something happens, like after lunch, after work, after breakfast, if something happened anyway, immediate call.
Yeah.
I mean, just a constant contact.
Yeah, and the ridiculous part is that if, I don't know, like after the morning call, there's been no call, and then the evening, you kind of are like, is everything okay? What happened today? Why did you call me 6 times?
We didn't talk in the last 4 hours.
Yeah, it's right.
Exactly.
And in Germany, I mean, you call when there is something out of the ordinary.
Yeah, and in Germany, it's almost the other extreme.
Yeah.
Like German parents can go weeks and sometimes even months, like without
Months
calling.
is pushing it a bit.
Well, depends on the parents, but it is not unheard of at all. I mean, in Greece, if you didn't talk to your kid for a month, it would mean like the family is in,
broken up.
Yeah, exactly. And in Germany, if you don't talk to your parent for a month, it's not like, oh wow, what's this? It can happen.
Yeah, like you're super busy or something like that. Yeah.
Or like, but
I mean, a month is pushing, but I would say like,
definitely a week.
Yeah.
Definitely
exactly. You're gonna check in after a couple of weeks to be like, hey, I'm good, or
and
maybe you're not gonna be.
If something bad happens, you're gonna call.
And or if something really good happens.
Good happens.
Or many times the contact will not be like, are you okay? Is everything okay? But it'll be like, look what an interesting article,
Yeah, you're right.
Because like the main contact between our father and us, if we're okay, I mean, now that we live in the same city, we see him, of course, a lot more, but would be like, he would send us articles that he would recommend for us, that are kind of interesting to us, or maybe book recommendations or things like that, it wouldn't be like, are you okay? Is everything okay? Did you brush your teeth this morning? So that is definitely very different.
It's very different, yeah. So the last point we kind of already touched on when we were talking about other things was patriotism, which I think is a big point, which, I mean, you already mentioned a lot, but I think it's interesting to just put it as a separate point because, I mean, as you said, since World War II, it is almost a bad thing for a German to be patriotic, and for a Greek person to be patriotic is so natural. So natural. It's like self-evident. Every Greek person is patriotic, and for us who are both, and I think that we both like have things that we love about each culture.
Yes.
I mean, I'm very happy that I grew up in Germany. I'm very grateful for this country, and I'm proud of the things it has to offer.
Yes.
For me as a musician, for the classical music scene, it's incredible.
How it elevates people out of poverty.
Exactly. I mean, there's so many great things about this country, but still, I feel more patriotic about being Greek. And I think this is part of the culture, Also, just, if you, in sports, if you see a football game, the German players, they don't really sing the anthem, or they like kind of halfway, whatever. In Greece, if you hear the anthem, I mean, people are belting it out.
Yeah.
People are feeling it in their core.
To be honest, I mean, I've changed my perspective on it multiple times, and I don't think it's a very easy thing to say because it is such a contentious topic in Germany. I mean, in Germany, in school, it's very normal to, at some point, I don't know, around 10th or 11th grade, have to write an essay on the question, are you responsible, do you share responsibility for the Second World War?
Right.
Like, for the Holocaust,
My essay was titled, are you allowed to be, is it okay to be proud to be German? This was our
for me, it was really just straight up, like, what is your, like, what part did you play in it, basically, this type of question. And I think, first of all, I think that it is important and really, really good that Germany teaches such an honest and hugely self-aware version of history. I think that many countries could absolutely use a dose of that. Like, I specifically think of countries like the UK or America, that, could use a more sober version of history where you glorify the successes and you totally, I would say, acknowledge not just failures, but acknowledge the bad history, the horrific history.
Things,
And in Germany, I would say, it's very much, you don't glorify the successes. You only talk about the horrific. Obviously you learn about the history before, but it's very. I mean, you talk about the Third Reich from first grade to last. I mean, maybe not first grade, but like literally third or fourth grade. And it starts out,
and it comes up in every subject. It's incredible. I mean, in history, obviously it comes up. In politics, in every language, you talk about it. In geography, you talk about it. You talk about it in everything. And maybe just not in math, but but you basically talk about it in everything.
Exactly. And that I find, I support that a lot. I don't think at all that it should be, put this emphasis or anything. I mean, I think you should talk about it. You should be super aware. What I find, I would say, also dangerous for potential consequences is that what follows is, therefore, you shouldn't be proud to be German. Which is what follows, what is absolutely, like, there is, I would say, there is a certain skepticism with which people view German patriotism. And I think it's also true because many people alive today were alive during the Second World War, children during the Second World War. And those were the people whose children are kind of our parents. And that means that our parents in particular, therefore then, grew up with this almost, rebellion against that and this kind of, very big anti-patriotism movement. And at this point, I think that has led to now this, again, third counter-rebellion towards, no, you have to be proud to be German, And I think that what we should take away from this chapter of history is not that much a German lesson, but a human lesson. It's not Germany, it's not something intrinsic to German culture that made those horrific events possible. It's something in human nature that made those horrific events possible. And therefore, I think it should be, the perspective with which it should be taught is beware of that side of you that could have very easily, with some wrong circumstance, have ended up being an Auschwitz guard. That side of you exists. You might wish it doesn't exist. You can't imagine it existing, but that side of you exists. Beware of that side of you and make sure that when you make your decisions in life, you don't choose to listen to the parts of you that could become that. That's what one should take away from it. Not that you shouldn't be proud of being German.
Yeah, because the thing is that since it's being instilled in us, as you said, this, be careful, don't be too proud to be German, I think that side can even easier, come out even easier because it's being suppressed so much. So for someone that somehow maybe is also naturally a little more inclined to go there, he will feel so suppressed that it's just going to explode.
And also from an international perspective, the amount of times I've heard people that are not German say things like, the Germans, of course, in Germany. And I'm thinking to myself, like, I take responsibility. I acknowledge that there are aspects in German culture, of obedience and, listening to respecting authority that are maybe more conducive towards, this type of authoritarian regime. I acknowledge that, but I also, also from a historical perspective, this could have happened in many places in the 1930s.
Maybe not in every single place, but in many.
And it can happen in any single place with the wrong circumstances. So what I always find myself thinking is, don't be so naive as to think that this is a German problem. This is and we are kind of taught that it is a German problem. And I'm fine with it, as long as we are, kind of extra aware of it, but especially with the trends towards the extremes that are going on in the world right now, the extremes in both directions, I keep thinking to myself I wish more people were taught this more sober perspective of history. With the emphasis of, you are not immune to this type of development. No country, no culture, no place, no time in history is immune to such a development. And when we consider ourselves immune to it, that's when shit hits the fan, you know? And I think that is what's positive about the fact that we're taught a lot about it. But, we should be taught about it with pulling the right consequences from it. And in my opinion, that's the right consequence to pull from it.
Yeah, and I think, for example, a country like Greece, celebrating its patriotism the way it does is an amazing example, because it is nothing to do with, being against somebody else, but it is just celebrating the amazing things, celebrating its history, which of course it has a lot of, celebrating its music, celebrating its people, and, just in the end, celebrating life.
Exactly.
And I think that it is not a coincidence that when people travel to Greece, they're like, oh yeah, those Greek parties, those Greek people, because they suddenly feel it too. I feel like when you're as a tourist in Greece, you suddenly become patriotic about Greece because somehow it's this feeling that catches on. Yeah, so I think this is the end of our episode. Now we just have the last segment, which is where we tell stories about each other.
Yes, I have one story.
Okay, you want to go first?
Okay, so my story is actually like, going to this more like, Greek dancing situation of a story between the two of us when we were extremely little. I think I was 3 years old and you were 7 years old. And there was this one like Latin band that was performing at the castle of Molivos, of the village where we're from. And you remember it, I think, more clearly than I do because you were 4 years older. But the way I remember is that one way or another, I think by our parents or something, we were encouraged. The band had said, everyone who wants to dance, come on stage and dance. And no one was kind of like daring to go on stage. And I remember, I think our parents were like, come on, go. And that we then ended up going on stage, the two of us, and there was like a small even video of that. And like kind of dancing, I think like ballet movements, kind of doing that little moment. And I remember, I remember it kind of, hazily, how much I loved it. And I thought it was so cool. And that's definitely like, the Greek side in us that came out in that story.
For sure. I have a similar story, only much later in time.
Okay.
We were at a birthday party. It was here in Berlin, actually.
Yeah.
And it was a birthday party where, let's say, the atmosphere was not exactly pumping. It was, everyone was sitting. It was like kind of chill. A lot of Germans were present. And yeah, it was kind of boring. And the person that invited us knew us very well and knew the Greek partying side of us and actually said to us, do you want to like get this going?
Yeah.
And we definitely got this
going.
We started with the Greek music, we started with the Greek dancing, and that's the beauty of it because the Greek dances are not hard. They're very simple, everyone can do them. So we started teaching everyone, and in the end, it was so beautiful.
Yeah.
Everyone joined in and was dancing these Greek dances. We were holding hands, dancing together. We were doing the solo dances. Everyone was trying them.
Yeah.
It was amazing. It was such a great memory. And at the end of that party, people came up to us when we were leaving and said, oh my God, what you did there was incredible.
Yeah.
Thank you for this. And it is not because we did something well. It's just, that's the thing. The Greek way of celebrating is what was incredible. And it was such a nice memory for me. And it really showed me once again the power of the Greek way of celebrating life is so, so big.
Exactly. All right.
So this concludes our episode.
And the next episode, I think, is going to be like a huge U-turn from everything we've talked about to something actually, a conversation that we often have. And I think it's an interesting conversation to have both for our generation, but especially for the generation to come, like your kids and stuff. And it is about the porn industry.
Yeah, so it's ups and downs and also maybe our shifting perspective, or at least my shifting perspective throughout the years.
And I think it's something that is not talked about a lot from, I would say, the perspective of people that are completely, obviously not, like, it's maybe the people that are involved in the industry talk about it a bit,
but of course we have no,
we have no involvement.
No ties to it whatsoever.
Exactly.
Just things that we see and that we see in people. So anyway, stay tuned for that episode.
Exactly. So see you next week. Lots of love. Bye.
Bye.
You're listening to The Sister Trill with Danae and Kiveli.